Either prices were asked which were beyond the means of the multitude to pay, or shops remained entirely closed. As a result, food prices soared out of the reach of outcast laborers, displaced weavers, sharecroppers, and poor peasants. The dearth, that is the shortage of food, as the 19th century pointed out a few months later, was one of money and of labor rather than of food. There was no shortage of food. People were dying on the streets. There is no shortage of food. But there was no, because the people had no money to buy the food, so they were unable to save themselves. I have faced, as a human rights worker, as a social worker working in the field of health and nutrition, I have faced the same situation. We had famine in Chhattisgarh, in Wadrafnagar area, in Sarguja district, and I went to investigate as part of a PUCL team. I went there to investigate, and the Food Corporation of India manager was almost in tears, because he said that at a subsidized price of 3 rupees per kilo of rice, the people were there because the Tendupatta prices had not been paid that year. The contractors had not paid the Tendupatta prices, they were keeping the money. So the people, because they had no money, they couldn't even buy the rice at 3 rupees per kilo. So the FCI manager told me, what can I do, sir? I am moving the rice to the markets, but if the people are not able to buy it, what can I can't, there is nothing that I can do. Same situation. The earlier optimism of mid-Victorian observers, Karl Marx as well as Lord Salisbury, about the velocity of economic transformation in India, especially the railroad revolution, had failed to adequately discount for the fiscal impact of such modernization in quotes, quote, modernization, unquote. The taxes that financed the railroads had also crushed the riots. Their inability to purchase subsistence was further compounded by the depreciation of the rupee. What was the English government? English government was ruling in India at that time. What was their response? I'd like to tell you a little bit about their response. The central government, under the leadership of Queen Victoria's favorite poet, Lord Lytton, who was Viceroy of India at that time, vehemently opposed efforts by Buckingham. There was the person in charge of the Madras presidency was called Buckingham, after whom the Buckingham Canal is named in Madras. Lord Lytton opposed efforts by Buckingham and some of his district officers to stockpile grain or otherwise interfere with the market forces. Adam Smith, the market forces, the market must become supreme. So Buckingham wanted to store grain and give it to the poor people. But Lord Lytton told him, nothing doing. You can't relieve the people's famine in that way. All through the autumn of 1876, while the vital Kharif crop was withering in the fields of southern India, Lytton had been absorbed in organizing the immense imperial assemblage in Delhi to proclaim Victoria Empress of India, Kaisar-e-Hind. As the Times' special correspondent described it, the Viceroy seemed to have made the tales of Arabian fiction true. Lytton put on a spectacle which achieved the two criteria Salisbury had set him 6 months earlier, of being gaudy enough to impress the Orientals, and furthermore a pageant which hid the nakedness of the sword on which we really rely. So you rely on the sword, but you hide the nakedness of the sword by giving Maharajas and Rajas and Maharajas a week-long continuous feast. Its climacteric ceremonial included a week-long feast for 68,000 officials, Kshatraps and Maharajas, the most colossal and expensive meal in world history. An English journalist later estimated that 100,000 of the Queen Empress's subjects starved to death in Madras and Mysore in the course of Lytton's spectacular darbar. Indians in future generations justifiably would remember him as their Nero. Nero was the Roman emperor who was playing his violin while the people were starving and the Rome was burning. So Lytton was the Nero of India. There is lots more in this. There is a whole, this is a wonderful, very important book. See if you can get hold of it. Late Victorian Holocausts. I think the whole subject of famine in the 1870s, 1880s and 1890s has not been adequately integrated into the history of India. I think that this is something very important. There's a author's name is Mike Davis, and his book will be available in Ramakrishna Mission Library shortly. I think this will be wonderful if you can get it. So how does that tie up with our day today, our situation today? I would like to tell you about a famine that is existing in our own country. You see, the famine was existing in India, and the English rulers were completely unaware of the famine, and they were, to the extent that they were aware, they were not responding to it. In India today we have a famine. I want to tell you about that famine, which not many people, which people don't know about, and which is existing in the midst of the entire society. Where is this famine? Now I'd like to tell you about some statistics. And there is a new concept, the body mass index, which I want to introduce you to. The body mass index is an index which shows the level of nutrition of any person. Body mass index. Please try to understand this concept. The body mass index is weight in kilograms. My weight is 80 kilograms. Weight in kilograms. So you just take the 80, you don't take the kilograms, you just take 80. Weight in kilograms divided by the height in meters. My height is 1.75 meters. My height is 1.75 meters. So you divide the weight in kilograms by the height in meters squared, 1.75 squared, roughly comes to 3.1. So you divide 80 by 3. So what do you get? 27. Okay? 27 is my body mass index. For any individual, if you calculate the body mass index and then compare the index with the norms, internationally recognized norms, then you can tell whether that person is undernourished, normally nourished, slightly obese, which is I am slightly obese, slightly fat, little fat, not very fat, little bit fat. Most middle class people will come in little bit fat or too much fat. So if your body mass index is between 18.5 and 22, you are a normally nourished person. Between 18.5 and 22, you are a normally nourished person. Between 22 and 27, you are little bit fat. Above 27, if your body mass index goes above 27, then you are obese. You may be subject to diabetes, or you may develop coronary heart disease, all these diseases associated with obesity. But supposing your body mass index is below 18.5, if your body mass index is below 18.5, then you are undernourished, chronically undernourished. Chronically undernourished. These are statistical variables. They don't apply in the individual case, but if you conduct a study of a community, then these norms apply to the findings of that community. So if the body mass index of the proportion of people who have a body mass index in any community of less than 18.5 will show chronic undernutrition.